Moonsault Scramble may have been one of the wildest roller coasters ever built, and we'll probably never see anything like it again. Without question, it was ridiculously intense, and in many places in the world today, roller coasters would not be allowed to be designed in this manner. It operated at Fuji-Q Highland, a Japanese amusement park from 1983 to 2000. It was known as a shuttle roller coaster, meaning the track was not a complete circuit, so riders traversed its layout backwards and then forwards. Upon reaching the top of the staggeringly tall incline, the train would take a backwards dive all the way to ground level and achieve incredible speed. A heart-shaped pretzel knot inversion would follow, sending the train upside down twice, but it was cartoonishly small relative to the gargantuan drop, causing the train to whip through the inversion at breakneck speeds, subjecting riders to a record 6.5 G-forces. That is 6.5 times the normal pull of Earth's gravity on a person. We're talking G-forces that you rarely find on any roller coaster in existence, and certainly not on most modern roller coasters built today. In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at Moonsault Scramble, both its history and design, why the ride today may not be considered quote-unquote legal according to modern-day amusement ride regulations, and why the ride could even be compared to the Euthanasia Coaster, which, if you're not familiar, is a hypothetical roller coaster design meant to quite literally peacefully kill all its passengers. Let's dig in. Located in Fuji, Yoshida, Japan, about 2 hours away from Tokyo, near the famous Mount Fuji, Fuji-Q Highland has made a name for themselves by breaking roller coaster records. The park's origins trace back to 1961, with the opening of the Fuji Five Lakes International Skating Center. By the mid-1960s, the park would begin installing amusement ride attractions, and debut Giant Coaster in 1966, which was the world's longest steel roller coaster of the time. In 1996, the park opened Fujiyama, the world's tallest and fastest roller coaster with the largest drop at the time. In 2001, Fuji-Q debuted Dodonpa, the world's fastest roller coaster at the time, as well as the world's fastest accelerating roller coaster. The ride still holds the latter record today. In 2006, the park opened Euthanasia, which to this day is the world's tallest and longest fourth dimension roller coaster, where riders' seats spin and flip independently of the main track. And in 2011, the park debuted Takabisha, which for a number of years featured the world's steepest drop on any roller coaster at 121 degrees. I was fortunate to visit Fuji-Q Highland in 2018, and it did not disappoint. Takabisha was marvelous. Dodonpa's launch is one of the craziest moments I've ever experienced on a roller coaster. Fujiyama manages to be one of my favorite roller coasters, and Euthanasia is literally my favorite roller coaster ever because it's that insane. Speaking of favorites, I also have to give a shout out to our video sponsor, HelloFresh. HelloFresh has made it so simple to prepare and cook some of my favorite foods while still creating these long nerdy videos. With HelloFresh, it eliminates the hassle of grocery shopping and meal planning, as they deliver pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes straight to your doorstep. Then simply follow the step-by-step instructions to whip together restaurant-quality meals right in the comfort of your own home. And best of all, HelloFresh is cheaper than takeout and grocery shopping, making it a win-win for your wallet and your taste buds. HelloFresh offers a variety of delicious and healthy meals for you to choose from, making it perfect for busy individuals living on their own or families with picky eaters. Better yet, you can even customize meals by swapping, upgrading, or adding proteins and sides with calorie-smart or carb-smart options. And if you're short on time, you'll love the quick and easy recipes, ready in less than 30 minutes and still packed with flavor and filling proteins. All of HelloFresh's ingredients are sourced from farms and delivered straight to your doorstep in less than a week, ensuring you always receive fresh, high-quality produce. Cooking with fresh ingredients not only tastes better, but it can also provide you with more nutrients and a better overall eating experience. And if you love snacking, HelloFresh has you covered with a range of snacks, sides, desserts, and more at HelloFresh Market. Simply add them to your weekly order and they'll arrive with your meals. My wife and I love the peanut butter lava cakes. Try HelloFresh today and use my code, or click on the link in the description for a great discount. I've used HelloFresh for months and you won't be disappointed. Anyway, so when Fuji-Q Highland opened Moonsault Scramble in 1983, it fit right in with the park's mission. Standing at an overall height of 70 meters or nearly 230 feet, Moonsault Scramble opened as the world's tallest roller coaster in a sense. At that time, the tallest roller coasters weren't more than 150 feet or 48 meters tall. The only thing close was Loop Coaster, another Japanese shuttle coaster that we'll talk about shortly. The Guinness Book of World Records even recognized Moonsault Scramble as the world's tallest roller coaster until Fujiyama opened in 1996. But there was controversy with this claim. Since Moonsault Scramble was a shuttle coaster, it meant that its train never reached the full height of its 70-meter incline. Instead, the train was only hoisted to a height of 66 meters or about 217 feet, and only the first car of the train would reach this height, since the train was lifted up the incline facing forward. So the rear car of the train achieved a much lower height, and may have not even achieved 60 meters or 197 feet. Once Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point opened in 1989 at a height of 205 feet or 62.5 meters, it was fair to say that Magnum was the world's tallest overall roller coaster, as Magnum is a full circuit roller coaster, meaning the entire train passes over the ride's tallest point. Controversy aside, in terms of intensity, Moonsault Scramble would rival today's coasters fiercely. The ride was created by Meisho Amusement Machines, a Japanese ride manufacturer who had built a long catalog of roller coasters throughout Japan. The overall cost to build Moonsault Scramble was 1.2 billion yen, or about $4.9 million in 1983. The ride was themed after a rocket taking off to space, so its station building was meant to represent a space station, and it appears the English word TranStar with the number 229 was decalled on both sides of the station building, with 229 probably being a reference to the ride's height in feet. The park even said the ride's continuously curving inclines are meant to represent the takeoff of a space rocket, and even the insane pretzel knot simulated the intense G-forces that only trained astronauts could handle. The ride's name was based off the moonsault technique used in gymnastics competitions, as the pretzel knot was a good representation of the backward somersault maneuver. The ride was built within the center of an outdoor ice skating rink, and it nestled into the location perfectly with its long and narrow layout. There was even a bridge over the ice skating rink for guests to access the coaster when the ice rink was in use. Moonsault Scramble had a track length of 460 meters or 1,509 feet and occupied a piece of land 180 meters long by 90 meters wide, or 590 feet by 295 feet. Most of the 90-meter width of the coaster was only at the pretzel knot due to its support structure. You can see how it arches its way over both ends of the ice skating rink below as to not interfere with it, and overall had a very eye-catching design. In fact, the pretzel knot itself had a diameter of only 26 meters, or about 85 feet, so the support structure was over triple the width of the actual pretzel knot. At either side were tall towers, with the taller tower being on the right, probably to correspond with a taller 70-meter incline on that side. There was then an upper arch that began from the bottom of the towers and supported the upper halves of the pretzel knot, and an interlocking lower arch flipped upside down that stretched from higher up the towers to the lower valley of the pretzel knot. The ride's queue was within the infield of the ride between the station building and straight track leading into the second incline. This is what the inside of the station looked like, and it was certainly nothing noteworthy. The ride ran a single 7-car train that held 28 passengers, and alongside individual shoulder restraints to secure riders, there was also a single lap bar for both of the riders in each row. Now, even though the ride could only run one train at a time, the ride interestingly featured a transfer table within the station building. You can see it pictured here. Now, this did not allow the ride to run 2 trains at a time like on some shuttle coasters like Mr. Freeze at Six Flags Over Texas, but it certainly helped with the park's year-round operations. Fuji-Q owned at least 2 complete trains for Moonsault Scramble. Here's a shot of the ride operating while one train was sidelined on the storage track. But what probably happened was both trains could be used interchangeably during times that both trains were fully assembled, by sliding the transfer table to align with the right or left track. The selected train would probably operate through that entire day, while the other train sat idle on the sideline track or received routine maintenance. This probably helped immensely with the wear and tear on each train, since the G-forces of the pretzel knot certainly took their toll. And during other times of the year, there would be no second train present, probably because the removed train was taken from the track for its yearly rebuild. The ride began with a push out of the station by tire drives into the catch car. The front car of the train would engage the catch car, and the catch car would slowly winch the train up the incline, a process that took a full 90 seconds to reach 66 meters. Hoisting the catch car were 2 steel cables that rode through some sort of pulley system. Unlike some of Meisho's other looping shuttle coasters, where the cables simply sat on top of steel bars, and you could see them whip around. Interestingly, the catch car sported a decal reading HL229, probably to represent the ride's height level of 229 feet, which I find intriguing since Japan uses the metric system, just like pretty much the entire rest of the world except the United States. After reaching a height of 66 meters, the train would kind of abruptly disengage from the catch car. This would lead into a long backwards plummet all the way down the massive incline with a tight pull-out into the station. The train would blast through the station and enter the pretzel knot, which was only 20.5 meters or 67 feet tall, so the train raced through it at breakneck speeds. This was when riders were subjected to 6.5 Gs. Just imagine that the train took a 200-foot drop into a 67-foot tall inversion. After completing both inversions of the pretzel knot, the train would ride alongside a section of downward slope straight track that matched the track in the station building. Next was the second incline. It was 60 meters or 197 feet tall and mirrored the 70-meter tall spike in curvature until the top where it curved steeper at a lower height. The rear car of the train would ride to a height of 50 meters or 164 feet up the incline, so 16 meters or 52 feet lower than the height the first car was hoisted to on the first incline. The train would then drop down the incline traveling forwards and begin its return to the station. The train would ride uphill through the straight track and into the pretzel knot much slower than it did on the first pass. This led to a much more controlled ride through the pretzel knot instead of the comically fast first pass. I'd imagine the G-forces on this pass were still quite high due to the tight radius of the inversion, but in the realm of what modern day roller coasters exert, maybe 4 Gs at the most. The train would then descend into the station building where the ride's tire drive brake system would slowly bring trains to a stop. Using tire drives to slow a train traveling this fast was definitely an odd choice. Moonsault Scramble may have also used regular friction brakes to help slow down trains. You can hear the clunking of what sounds like brakes. But my show lists that the ride only used the tire drive brake system. On Moonsault Scramble, it took a complete forward pass through the station, followed by a backwards pass to slow the train to a manageable speed. The train would then slowly coast forward on the downward slope track and stop in place, finally ending the nearly 2-minute and 40-second long ride. If the tire drive brakes worked how they did on some of my show's other coasters, it appears the train would spin the wheel here, and connected to the wheel via a shaft was a brake rotor. The brake rotor would slide between brake calipers, which would create a lot of friction, basically the exact same thing as car brakes. This would resist the motion of the train and slow it down. From reviews I've read online, Moonsault Scramble was not an easy roller coaster to ride more than once in a row. The G-forces of the pretzel knot were insane, and like I said earlier, most roller coasters reach nowhere near 6.5 Gs, let alone 6 Gs. The highest you'll usually see on average is 4 Gs. Another example is Tower of Terror at Gold Reef City in South Africa, which pulls 6.3 Gs at the bottom of its first drop. But Tower of Terror and Moonsault Scramble do not comply with regulations created by the American Society of Testing and Materials, or ASTM International. Committee F24 of ASTM International covers amusement rides and devices. The F24 committee formed in 1978 and is comprised of consumer advocates, government officials, amusement park operators and suppliers, and amusement ride operators. The F24 committee has developed voluntary standards that are incorporated by 38 states in the United States and a good list of countries around the world. A good amount of the standards developed by the committee have to do with amusement ride safety standards, including limitations on vertical positive G-forces. High and sustained positive G-forces in the vertical direction can rush blood out of a rider's head and cause them to pass out. This is a graph of the ASTM standard for vertical positive G-forces. If negative G-forces hadn't occurred for 3 or more seconds beforehand, the most positive G-forces a ride can exert is 6 Gs. Moonsault Scramble exceeded this at 6.5 Gs. Additionally, riders may only experience at most 1 second of a sustained 6G load. Moonsault Scramble most likely sustained 6.5 Gs for longer than 1 second, as the entire pretzel knot had quite a tight radius, both at the top of the upper halves as well as the lower valley between the two inversions. As of at least 2003, it appears that Japan is a member of the F24 committee. I assume this means that all rides in Japan must follow the G-force limitations set by ASTM International. So if Moonsault Scramble were in operation today, the ride certainly would not comply as it exerted more G's than the maximum amount of 6. It's why I say the ride had quote-unquote illegal G-forces, since the ride did not comply with ASTM regulations. And the ironic thing is that even if Moonsault Scramble were still in operation today and changes were required to make the ride comply with G-force limitations, solving this while keeping the ride largely the same probably wouldn't be an option. Let me explain by comparing Moonsault Scramble to the inspiration behind the ride, Loop Coaster Tojoko Toyland, another Japanese amusement park. Loop Coaster was another Maisho looping shuttle roller coaster. In fact, it was the company's prototype shuttle coaster, and it opened in August of 1979, 4 years before Moonsault Scramble. And like Moonsault Scramble, it was an absolute behemoth. It stood 59 meters or 194 feet tall. Trains plunged backwards down the 38-degree slope, through the station building, and down another drop into a vertical loop with a diameter of 21 meters or 69 feet. Watch how fast trains took the loop, as it was much too small compared to the first drop. The ride was advertised to exert 5.12 Gs in the loop, but it had to pull significantly more than that. The train would ride up a 57 meter or 187 foot tall incline that curved its way up to 70 degrees. After running out of speed, the train would drop back down the incline traveling forward. The train would then take a slightly slower but still fast lap around the vertical loop. Afterwards, side friction brakes in the station would slow the train to a stop. As you might have guessed, Loop Coaster was far too intense and required modifications. To slow the speed of the train, the catch car was reoriented to hoist trains to a lower height, which reduced the amount of speed the train carried into the first pass of the vertical loop, lowering the number of G-forces exerted. The train was also lengthened from 4 cars to 6 cars, but the important thing to note is it was an easy change to lower the train's speed and still consistently allow the ride to complete the circuit. Now, compared to Moonsault Scramble, Loop Coaster only had one inversion between its large inclines, where Moonsault Scramble had 2 full-size inversions as well as a substantial amount of straight track. So compared to Loop Coaster, Moonsault Scramble required more speed to complete the layout, as more speed was lost with the additional inversion and straight track. And with both coasters, the first incline had to provide enough speed for the train to complete a backward and forward pass of the layout, since the second incline had no propulsion device. This is unlike the popular Boomerang coaster produced by Dutch manufacturer Vekoma, a popular ride model that debuted in 1984, the year after Moonsault Scramble. But with a Vekoma Boomerang, both inclines have a propulsion device, so after completing the layout in one direction, the train engages the second lift and is elevated higher by a chain lift. This gives the train enough momentum to safely complete the circuit in reverse. Whereas with Maisho shuttle coasters, trains had to take the first pass of the layout much faster than the second pass, since the train gained all of its speed to complete the layout on the initial incline. With Loop Coaster, the initial incline provided enough energy for the train to complete 2 equally sized vertical loops with a height of about 21 meters or 69 feet. And then factoring in the second incline where trains reverse direction, it really means the initial incline gave enough energy for the train to complete 3 21-meter vertical loops. Then with Moonsault Scramble having 2 full-size inversions between the incline, it meant the initial incline provided enough speed for trains to complete 4 vertical loops with a height of 20.5 meters, or 67 feet. But factoring in the second incline, it really means the initial incline gave enough energy for the train to complete 5 20.5-meter vertical loops in a row. And unlike Loop Coaster, it wasn't as easy to lower the height that Moonsault Scramble's train was elevated to on the first incline, because of the additional ride elements that Moonsault Scramble's train needed to complete compared to Loop Coaster. Notice how much slower the train travels through the second pass of the pretzel knot. With any less speed, the consistency at which trains would complete the circuit in different conditions may have been compromised. So this essentially forced the first backwards pass of the pretzel knot to be far too intense, since the element had to be small in height so that trains could complete a second pass. So with Moonsault Scramble, it's almost as if Maisho did not learn their lesson after making Loop Coaster too intense. And it's ironic because after Maisho made Loop Coaster less intense, they began selling a loop-the-loop model in 1980 that was just like Loop Coaster, but only stood 45 meters or 148 feet tall, and had a 25 meter or 82 foot tall loop. So compared to Loop Coaster, it had a much shorter overall height and a larger loop. which made the G-forces exerted much safer. Maisho would sell several of these coasters, and one of them is still in operation today at Rusutsu Resort in Japan, and it looks to offer the perfect level of intensity. But when Maisho built Moonsault Scramble in 1983, it's as if they threw out the lessons they had learned. They built Moonsault Scramble 25 meters or 82 feet taller than their more modest loop-the-loop model, yet the pretzel knot was 4.5 meters or 15 feet shorter in height than the vertical loop on the loop-the-loop coasters. That just sounds insane. It's like Maisho purposely tried to outdo the original loop coaster in terms of intensity. They made the first incline substantially taller, didn't include a propulsion method on the second incline, and added 2 inversions between the inclines instead of a single vertical loop. Maisho originally advertised that Moonsault Scramble achieved a lower top speed than the loop-the-loop coasters. Here, the advertised top speed of Moonsault Scramble is 90 kilometers per hour, or 56 miles per hour, and the loop-the-loop coasters were advertised at 95 kilometers per hour, or 59 miles per hour, even though Moonsault Scramble had a much larger drop. Moonsault Scramble was recorded to actually reach speeds of 105 kilometers per hour, or 65 miles per hour. The tops of the pretzel knot also had to be modified, and additional cross ties were added at the tops of both inversions, probably to strengthen the running rails against the excessive forces applied against them, as the radius of the pretzel knot was smallest at the tops of the inversion, and may have been the most forceful moments of the element. Here's a shot of how the coaster looked originally, and the cross ties are equally spaced. And then this is how the coaster looked following modifications where additional cross ties were added. Moonsault Scramble also featured a wider track gauge compared to Maisho's other coasters at 1.3 meters, or 51 inches, where most of Maisho's other coasters had a gauge of 0.9 meters, or 35 inches. This is noticeable in the train designs, where on most of Maisho's coasters, the wheel assemblies were below the car bodies, and on Moonsault Scramble, the wheel assemblies were on the sides of the car to account for the wider track. This may have been done to help the train sit lower to the running rails. Because of Moonsault Scramble's radical design, where the train took a 66 meter or 217 foot drop into a 20.5 meter or 67 foot tall loop, I almost want to say that Moonsault Scramble nearly brought the concept of the Euthanasia Coaster to life, although it did so much more safely. If you're not familiar, the Euthanasia Coaster is a hypothetical steel roller coaster designed as a euthanasia device to kill all its passengers. Euthanasia devices are engineered to allow an individual to die quickly with minimal pain, so the Euthanasia Coaster was designed to inflict a continuous 10 Gs on its passengers through its 7 vertical loops. This would lead to prolonged cerebral hypoxia, which is insufficient supply of oxygen to the brain, causing passengers to quickly lose vision, followed by the quick loss of consciousness due to G-lock. Then in the ride's subsequent vertical loops, all passengers would die while unconscious, thus leading to a peaceful and quick death. The concept was designed by Julijonas Urbonas, a Lithuanian artist and PhD candidate at the Royal College of Art in London. As a former theme park employee, Urbonas' goal with the Euthanasia Coaster was to take lives with elegance and euphoria. Now, the reason I compare Moonsault Scramble to the Euthanasia Coaster is because they have similar design concepts, where basically a massive drop is followed by a vertical loop that is far too small. When I convert the pretzel knot into vertical loops, and then expand that into our model where the ride features 5 vertical loops, with the second incline being the hypothetical third loop, it's almost like the 7 loops of the Euthanasia Coaster. The Euthanasia Coaster is meant to feature a 510 meter or 1,670 foot drop and reach speeds of 360 kilometers per hour or 224 miles per hour. This is then followed by 7 back-to-back vertical loops, with the largest being a fraction of the size of the first drop. Each vertical loop consecutively shrinks in size. Moonsault Scramble's first inversion may have started off far too small like on the Euthanasia Coaster, but thanks to the following inversions remaining the same height, the train took each consecutive inversion at a slower rate, reducing the number of G-forces experienced by riders, which overall made the ride a lot safer than the Euthanasia Coaster concept. So the main reason I bring this comparison up is because I truly don't think there is any other example of a roller coaster that could be compared to the Euthanasia Coaster besides Moonsault Scramble. There are roller coasters where 2 vertical loops are placed back to back, like on Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas, but the loops are better proportioned to the first drop, and Moonsault Scramble's pretzel knot is comically small compared to the first incline. Now, this wouldn't be an El Toro Ryan video if we didn't discuss the block zones of Moonsault Scramble. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a block zone is a section of ride that only one train may occupy. At the end of a block zone is a method to stop a train in case the block zone ahead is still occupied. This is the method that keeps roller coaster trains from colliding into one another. Being a shuttle roller coaster that could only run one train at a time, you guessed it, Moonsault Scramble had 14 blocks. Moonsault Scramble had a single block zone that could service one train at a time. The extra track on the transfer table was not a second block zone. The ride was originally advertised to have a theoretical capacity of 720 riders per hour, and with the ride's 28-passenger train, would have required about 26 dispatches an hour. That's a dispatch about every 138 seconds. But the ride took about 2 minutes and 40 seconds to make a full cycle, so 160 seconds, due to the slow lift system and how long it took to bring trains to a stop. So 720 riders per hour wasn't physically possible. MyShow's website, as of its last update in 2000, advertises a lower capacity of 560 riders per hour, which requires 20 dispatches per hour at a dispatch rate of every 180 seconds, which leaves just 20 seconds for unloading and loading of new riders, which most definitely never happened at Fuji-Q Highland. Now, I wouldn't call Fuji-Q's ride operations abysmal, as the ride attendants have great enthusiasm and certainly work hard, but there are so many policies and procedures they must follow that dispatches are usually very slow. So at best, I guess Moonsault Scramble cycled every 5 minutes, probably longer, but that is 12 dispatches an hour and an amazing 336 riders per hour. Yikes. Moonsault Scramble operated until April of 2000 and was removed afterwards to make room for Dodonpa. Takabisha was also built on part of the land previously occupied by Moonsault Scramble in 2011, but as a great tribute to the ride, the park has kept a Moonsault Scramble car out on the main midway. I got to see one of the cars for myself in 2018, and it was a great way to somewhat imagine that the coaster used to dominate the skyline at Fuji-Q. So that will do it for this video on Moonsault Scramble at Fuji-Q Highland. For anyone who ever got to experience the insanity of the coaster's pretzel knot, I am extremely jealous, and please share your experience with the coaster in the comments below. For anyone else who didn't get to ride, you're in the same camp as me, and will only be able to ride the coaster in our dreams. But hopefully this video served as some sort of satisfaction to bring you closer to Moonsault Scramble. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something new. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, everyone. Peace.